had to wear bright clothes for this video to keep me from being too depressed. But anyway, way to start the run. We start off with the chapter of the winds of, I don't know. But we start off with this chapter, and it's one of my chapters. We catch up with the Band of the Hawk, and they've just, I was gonna say been defeated, but not really, because they kind of came out on top. But they're dealing with the tolls of battle yet again. And, you know, they've suffered their losses, and Corcus is grumpy as always, and Guts and Casca have a moment, and right when you're like, oh, then you get to see just how creepy Griffith is. Still, as usual. Creepy ass motherfucker. But it's just one of those chapters. It was just such a great note to start on for my last run of the Golden Age arc before we bring this arc to a close, because it's one of those chapters that I'm forever talking about because I just like them so much. And then we get to the next chapter, which is Casca changing Griffith's bandages, and it's almost sweet, and it's almost sad, and it's almost tragic, and it's almost all of these things because of the tenderness and the emotions put into it by the characters that we love so much, like Casca and Guts, when we have these moments. But they're just not because of Griffith, because he's just so eerie and off-putting, and Miura is just so good at making you feel these emotions through his artwork of the tenderness and the sadness of Casca, because we care so deeply for her. And you can see how much she cares for him. And yes, she's been sucked into this and manipulated into this in the worst way by Griffith, but that doesn't change the fact that the emotions that she's feeling, she's genuinely feeling this sadness and this tenderness, and he's so good at making you feel what she feels, all while having Griffith there in frame or in the panel, creeping you out and making you feel bad for feeling what he's made you feel. He's making you feel it while making you feel bad for feeling it. It's very interesting. It's very impressive. I know I keep saying it, but it is just so impressive, especially just what he can do with a picture. And the whole time you're just a little bit uncomfortable until suddenly you are all the way uncomfortable. And at the time that I was reading this, I thought, man, I am way more off-put and unsettled by this than I probably should be. And then I come to find out, reading on, no, I don't think I was. I think I was very appropriately off-put, and I think it was very intentional. I think he planned on you being that off-put by what just happened, and it was partially foreshadowing, but we'll get there. Oh boy. But then we get Judo, and I'm saying that right now. I hope. Thank you guys, by the way. But I love Judo. He is officially my favorite character in the Band of the Hawk. I mean, other than Guts and Casca, of course. He just takes the cake. I love him to death. And he gets his little speech, and it's so good. You should take Casca, and you and Casca go off, and you do you, because that's the way this should be. I'll take whoever is left or whoever wants to come. I'll have my little band of thieves, and we'll go do our thing, and we'll make enough money, and I'll take Griffith, and we'll take care of Griffith. I mean, it's wonderful. Like, you're like getting stars in your eyes just as you're listening to him talk. You're like, yes, this is wonderful, Judo. I think this is a plan. This is what we should do. You're the best there is. You know, and you know it's not going to happen because you know that this is tragic, and you know the eclipse is coming, and you know all this foreshadowing, and you know this is just not how it's going to work. But you can't help yourself when you're listening to him to be like, oh yeah, this is great. I like you, Judo. You know, like, ah. But then we go and we get another quick little scene with Guts and Casca and Griffith, while Griffith watches like the creepy little dude that he is. And this all leads to the boy in the back alley. And I got very excited because I have been saying all along that I really want Griffith's backstory. And I got super excited because here we are. And that's not what I got. Go figure. Instead, we get some weird dream / vision of him being with Casca, but having Guts as their child while he steals the carriage and then crashes it and breaks his arm in the process. It was very strange. It's at this point that I realized that I'm not going to get Griffith's backstory, the one that I've wanted. And it's coming into focus now that the only significant thing about Griffith's backstory is that his backstory is insignificant, which actually feels kind of poignant and powerful in its own right. You know, there's no real big inciting event. There is no real big trauma. There is no real big cataclysm that's going to happen to him that's going to start the ball rolling, that's going to eventually forge that fire inside of him, that's going to eventually make him into the ultimate big bad god hand that he's going to become. There really is no good reason as to why he is as bad as he is. It's just kind of his nature, and I never cease to be surprised by the narrative decisions that this guy is making. And now watch, I've resigned myself to this theory of Griffith's non-backstory, and I'll get some backstory in like an arc and a half or something, and then I'll have to readjust my brain. But as of right now, I have come to terms with the fact that he just doesn't get a significant backstory. And that in and of itself is actually, I feel, quite significant at this point. Anyway, so at this point, Griffith tries to kill himself, which was surprising. I did not see that coming. I didn't see him to be the kind of person to do that. And I literally went back and I read this part like 3 different times. And I even reread these couple of pages when I was putting the notes together for this. Like, did that really happen? And yeah, he legitimately attempts to kill himself. I thought, well, maybe he fell over. Maybe his like little, I have no tendons. Oh, and like, you know, one of those numbers, like, oh, just lost my balance. No, he like stares this spike down and like goes for it. I don't I mean, it is what it is, but it's just something I didn't think that Griffith, of all the characters, would do, especially after a chapter ago when he saw the withered old man and looked at him and was like, you know, I can be a demon too. So you would think he would be more invested in trying to become a demon and less invested in spiking his own throat with a stick. But you know, in that moment is the moment where the Behelit returns to him and the eclipse begins, and we get some really ominous ass panels leading up to that. And we get some shots letting us know that we're in an alternate dimension, I guess, basically, or some spell has encased them. Not really sure. Just to get a real quick flash over to Rickert, however the hell you say his name. By the time I get his name, he'll be dead. Probably, anyway. But we get a flash over to him getting a bad omen from a fortune teller or something like that, just for him to be like, oh my god, my friends, and run off. And hey, Puck's back. And then we get this section of just massive tension building as Guts is running and attempting to rescue Griffith sitting there in the little puddle, as slowly the god hands revealed and they arrive one after another, just page after page of this just tension building. And it is done so well. And he gets there and he scoops up Griffith, and then the god's hand starts to proclaim, you know, the prophecy of, you are the chosen one, you are the next god hand. And they're basically laying out what is happening and what is going to happen to Griffith and how this is going to work, while Guts is literally yelling at them. And it is by far the most Guts thing to do. It is just wonderful as they're like, you will be. And he's like, shut up. You know, I go. And also at this point in the story is when, and to be fair, all the way out throughout the rest of the Eclipse, but at this point is where we really start to get some of the most disturbing imagery that we've had ever in this series. And it just continues throughout the rest of the Eclipse. And I will show what I think I can show and what I think I can get away with on YouTube, but it gets real dark and it gets real creepy, and there's just some stuff on display here that you kind of have to see. But it's clear as this goes on that Guts is having a very different reaction to this speech that the God's Hand is giving than Griffith is. Also, there's a reaction shot when they really hammer home to Guts that it will be Griffith who sacrifices their lives. And at this point, the eclipse is pretty much in full effect. And to that, it's just pretty much like, oh, here we go. Like, for real. And immediately, Guts and Griffith are separated. Griffith falls down to something, I don't know, and lands on a something, I don't know. You know, I mean, just looking at some of these images, you're like, I don't know. But then we get, man, there's so much that happens here, and there's just so much that's good. I'm going to miss so much, I'm sure. But then we get to the section of Griffith having a vision or a dream or a memory. It's so cryptic and so obscure, I do not know what it is, but we get to the section of him being explained what the cost of his ambition will be. And it's him as a child talking to a little boy friend of his, and he wants to be a king, and the little boy says, that's great, I want to be a knight, I'll be your knight. And there's this old lady, as he's looking at this, all the castle in the distance, and it's like, it just says, that's the road to the castle, and then he falls and he realizes he's in like a pool of dead bodies. And he's like, I thought you said this was the road to the castle. And she's like,
it's the only road to the castle.
And I'm like, that shit's dark. Like, you know, and his little friend dies, and they're like, oh, don't stop now, you're halfway there. And he's like looking at just the bodies around him while he's clutching at the body of his friend while he's still attempting to climb the bodies. This is the symbol of what he has been led to believe is the cost of his ambition, what is owed. If you can pay this price, this is what you will be given. And this is basically just so symbolic of him struggling to come to terms with the overall cost, what it's going to cost him for this ambition. And the fact that he genuinely is having a hard time coming to terms with it, genuinely clinging to that little boy that could have, would have, maybe was his friend. I don't really know. But it shows a glimpse inside of his mind and the struggle of him coming to terms with the cost and the fact that he's willing to pay it. Which just also reinforces that Griffith is an evil dude, but he is not evil incarnate, or he wouldn't have this struggle. But just because he has the struggle doesn't mean he overcomes. He succumbs, and it ends in a shot of him staring down Guts and saying sacrifice. And you're just like, well, that's not creepy. It's chilling. And the carnage begins, really. He says the words, and it takes off like a rocket. Everyone gets branded. Griffith begins his transformation, and the demons are unleashed, and Guts just goes nuts. And he just starts ripping and tearing. Like, it's impressive. We also get a real quick shot outside of the bubble or the spell, but we get a real quick shot outside of Skull Dude. I can't say it, guys. Anyway, we get a quick shot outside of the Skull Dude fighting Zod, making it very clear that not all of the demons in this world or the demonic entities or whatever these creatures are on the same side. There's clearly rivalry in the demon ranks, and Skull Dude is not on board with what everybody else here is doing. So back inside the bubble is where the carnage is really taking place. And this section is extremely difficult to discuss. Not because the subject matter is so dark. That's not really it. It's more that this section, it's hard to discuss because it's something that really has to be experienced to really understand. Any words that I choose to use here are not going to do this section of this manga justice. Not even a little bit. That being said, there are obviously a few things I'm going to have to bring up, and I'm gonna have to talk about it. First things first, Corcus goes out like a putz. I was not surprised nor upset by the way Corcus went out. Sorry, but not sorry. But why judo? I mean, he was my favorite. Like, legit. My absolute favorite. And, I mean, I know that they're all gonna have to die, or at least the vast majority of them, but we could have found a way. We easily, for judo to, oh no, my arm, and then he falls down and he gets stuck under a rock or something, and oh, he's okay in the end. So we could have saved judo. That's all I'm saying. He didn't have to die. I was very upset by this. It's very unforgivable. I expect him to be resurrected in the next arc, some way, shape, or form. I want judo back. Hashtag justice for judo. This was bullshit, and you know it. But honestly, as much as I was really upset and devastated by losing judo, that was a really good scene, and he went out like a total boss, which of course he did, because it's judo, and he's the best, and you know it. And I just learned how to say his name right. How bull is that? I just figured out how to say his name, and So basically, at this point in the story, we get just a long montage of just pages of everybody dying. The whole band of the Hawk, one by one, meeting their end in various different ways, intermixed with Guts just mercilessly tearing through anything and everything that has the misfortune of being in his way. And Griffith's slow transformation into what he will eventually become. By the way, there's this one weird shot of him coming face to face with whatever the heart of all of this darkness, dark powers is, with him looking at it going, God? Like, are you God? And I'm looking at this weird, obscure panel going, nope. No, I don't think that's God, Griffith. But if that's what you think, But anyway, at the end of all of this, you boiled down to nobody's left but Guts and Casca. Officially, the Band of the Hawk is dead. All of them. And this is by far the hardest thing to read that I have read in this entire manga to this point. And I would imagine maybe for the rest of the manga. It's hard to imagine any section that could possibly be as difficult to read as this section was. Guts is held by his arm in a demon's teeth and has to watch as Griffith Casca. It's very, very upsetting, and it goes on for a very long time, like far longer than I expected it to. I was a little bit shocked when it happened, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, this is in line with the kind of stuff that happens in Berserk. But then it just kind of doesn't stop, to the point where Guts eventually cuts off his own arm with a broken sword to save her, just to be caught and pinned down by his head, and for it to keep going. I was just like, okay, enough is enough. Like, I mean, Jesus Christ. And the whole time Casca's screaming, don't watch. I mean, it's legitimately upsetting. I don't have words for just how terrible this section is to get through. This was hard to read. But thankfully, after what was way longer than it should have been, Skull Dude finally breaks in through what I've been calling the bubble, and he swoops in and he saves Guts and Casca, and he hightails it out of there. And Guts lost an eye, got stabbed in the eye. And I mean, let's be real. After this section, I'm a little bit broken just because I had to read this section. I don't even want to know what happened to Guts and Casca from it. I even had an idea of what to expect in this backstory, and I still wasn't prepared. And I'm not talking about, his childhood and his upbringing and his mother figure and his father figure and all that stuff that I went so hard in on, like, oh, we went too far too fast. And even if you take all of that and get rid of it, like, that didn't even happen. Let's just pretend Guts had a happy childhood and you give us just the Eclipse, and I would be able to understand how Guts acted the way he acted in The Black Swordsman, because that 5 chapters alone is enough to break the reader, let alone the characters. Anyway, moving on. So we get to safety. We're out. Woohoo, it's over. But no, it's not. It's not over because I was stupid and I was like, let's finish the arc. I should have just stopped there and called it a day. But no, I grinded out the rest of the arc. And we get, to deal with the aftermath now. We get to deal with, Guts waking up and finding Casca, and she has no memory, and she's hiding, and she's scared of him, and it's just heartbreaking. Really? Well, this is how you're going to end it? You son of a bitch. Anyway, I shouldn't speak badly of him. But that leads to just an amazing chapter. Somehow, Miura has this ability to capture a sense and a feeling and an idea and wrap that up in a little bit of art, and he gives you the sprint, and it's the chapter of just Guts running, and I don't know if he's running away or if he's just violently expelling some energy, get out steam. He is having so many emotions, and they are so powerful in that moment that he doesn't know how to handle it. He doesn't know how to react. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know, he doesn't know if he should scream. So he just runs, and it's like he's running away, but he's not. And he just loses kind of control, and he just goes on this run. That was another chapter that I was just like, this is so good. It was a beautiful chapter. There are moments where he just nails it. It's like his expression of sheer pain and anguish released in this one sprint. And it's portrayed in a way that's just almost too perfect to put into words. And that ends with Guts experiencing the consequences of carrying that brand for the very first time ever. The consequences we already know of because of the Black Swordsman, but this will be his first time actually experiencing that. And now he's out kind of in the middle of nowhere because of his little jog that he just went on, but which actually it doesn't really. Skull guy just kind of pops up, tosses him a sword, and he takes him out pretty much without even batting an eye. And then somewhere mixed in there, in dealing with all these consequences, we have to go through the horrible scene of Casca miscarrying Guts' baby, but because of what Griffith did to her, it's now a demon baby thing that she clings to while Guts tries to get rid of it, while she won't let it. It's a really awful scene. It's just, this whole section is a roller coaster ride, and not the fun one. Nothing about this is really fun. But anyway, I really wanted to get all of that out, and I really just want to express just how good this is. I mean, this section was so good. It was bad. I mean, it was awful. Didn't enjoy this. It was really terrible, but it was so well done. It was so good. And I really, really, really want to hammer that home right now, because I'm getting ready to go on a little mini rant here. There's a massive frustration, a huge frustration that popped up right at the end, and I was so, here we go. Several times throughout the length of these videos and this run, and I will be continuing, by the way, but throughout the course of this arc, have I complained about plot convenience and just things being far too convenient and frustratingly so, and I didn't like it, and they get on my nerves, and it could have been done differently, or it could have been done better, or plot convenience in general just irritates me in this when I feel that it could have been done better or handled better. And the skull dude drops him off at the mountain hideaway that he hid in for a year, where he knows the old blacksmith dude. Basically, the one most convenient place on the face of the planet that they could have dropped him off after he just lost his arm and his eye, to get kitted out with his new arm and his new sword and ready to go, like bam. There is no more convenient place for him to be dropped in the entire universe than that spot. And they even address it in the text where he's like, I forget, hold on. He's like, I know this place and these people. Why am I here? And the skull dude's just like, oh, I just found this place here, and it just looked like it might have been safe. Who knows? Must have been a coinkydink. And you're just like, really? Really? Must have just, I think he calls it chance. But seriously? I was so irritated. Okay, before you kill me in the comments, hear me out. How cool would it have been if we say, drop Guts off at Rikert in some random ass location, right? Just a random safe zone. And then Guts is now broken. He has nothing. He has no arm. He has no eye. He doesn't even have Casca because she doesn't remember him. And he has to leave Casca with Rikert. He then remembers the old blacksmith on the mountain. And he knows that, the one place that he can go and he can get some new gear to maybe be all a little bit better. Anything. And it's been set up. We know the old man because we've been introduced to him. Guts knows the old man, obviously. It's been established that he's a blacksmith. All this has been established. And then Guts goes out to find him. It doesn't even have to, it could have been a chapter, And Guts has to go out to find this guy and has to then struggle with no proper gear, no proper weapon, not even an arm, has to try and get back to this blacksmith so that he can get something to try and fashion himself back into at least fighting shape. Anything. There was so much potential for a storyline there, and instead it's just like, I guess this is the place where we dropped you. This arc was too good for this cop-out ending to happen. I was not happy. Everything about this arc was too good for this bull to be thrown onto the end. Anyway, I'm so sorry. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this one a solid 9. It's probably better than that, I know, but we're calling it a 9. And I might have to go back and retroactively re-rate all of this once this is all said and done. But for the time being, and not knowing how this is going to go in the future, and I need to give room for growth because, I've seen people's ratings of future arcs being better, and then I've also heard people say that it'll never ever get better than this again. But we shall see now, won't we? Anyway, long story short, it's a 9. I'm sorry for the rant, and I'll see all you guys in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.